Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life List, a birding podcast. I am George Armistead, and on this episode, we did something a little bit different. I had the chance to interview several folks working for the Cape May Bird Observatory this fall season of 2023. I spoke to Martina Nordstrand, Gautam Apte, and Aidan Place about what it's like to spend a season at the point, as it were, and try to get a little bit of a window into this legendary birding place. Cape May is probably a place you have heard of if you're a birder. It is incredibly well known worldwide as a incredible place to witness bird migration in particular. Recently, I had a bird watcher ask me what's so special about Cape May. What birds would I go there to see? I think people sometimes expect that there'll be a specialty or a list of birds that are easier to see there than elsewhere. And while there are a few like great cormorant or purple sandpiper, or American black duck, salt marsh sparrow, or maybe a few others if you're not from the east or haven't spent a lot of time on the coast, these are birds that might be sought after for you. But really, it's a place to see what they call VisMig, visible migration. And it is a fabulous place for that, whether it's hawks, songbirds, seabirds. It's really got an incredible mix of everything. So we talked to each of these three interns who've spent the fall at Cape May. One of them, Gautam Apte, was in the midst, I should say, of his second season there. If you're looking to learn more about Cape May, there's some good reading to be done. There's a great book by Clay and Pat Sutton called Birds and Birding at Cape May, What to See and When and Where to Go. There's a book that came out in 1994 that is called A Season at the Point, The Birds and Birders of Cape May by Jack Connor. And the book by Clay and Pat Sutton, that came out in 2006, still very much relevant to today and probably the most thoroughly researched in terms of all aspects of birding of Cape May. Really a fabulous book. But perhaps the most famous book on the birds of Cape May is called Bird Studies at Old Cape May, an ornithology of coastal New Jersey by Whitmer Stone, published by the Delaware Valley Ornithological Club in 1937. So that's an older book, but man, it is a fun read if you're interested in looking back at what migration would have been like about a century ago almost now. Anyhow, this is a little bit of a different thing. We are going to be doing some more interviews where each of the hosts picks somebody or a couple people to chat with about birds and birding. We hope you'll find this one entertaining and educational. Enjoy what you learned about Cape May. Okay, and here I am talking with Martina Nordstrand from North Carolina, right, Martina?
Yep, just outside Charlotte.
Nice. And what brought you to Cape May this fall? Tell us a little bit about your birding background and how you ended up at Cape May.
Yeah, so I was always one of the young birders, especially in the Carolinas. So I've always been birding for most of my life. And I had heard about Cape May growing up. I read a lot of Pete Dunn's books. So I remember The Feather Quest being, I think, the first book of his that I read.
Love that book.
And yeah, it was great. And it was like, I kept hearing about this Cape May place in books, and I'm like, oh, but for me, at least in North Carolina, so much of the Northeast is very inaccessible. It's really far. And so I never thought about going out there, trying to travel. But in 2018, actually, a bunch of young birders I was friends with online, we all decided to meet at Cape May, and I realized, I went to meet them primarily. I was like, Cape May is cool, but I wanted to meet my friends, and then realized, like, oh my gosh, like, this is beyond the level of birding that I was like had ever been exposed to. And just like, I remember one of my first mornings up on the dike, just being like awestruck by all these birds in morning flight. And you'll hear this a lot in this interview, but it's always the culture and community for me. Especially in Cape May, I think it's the strongest. So I did a young birders camp. I did Camp Cascades with Vent, and Victor Manning Nature Tours, with Michael O'Brien and Louise Amitis, and
diehard Cape May birders as well.
Yeah. And in 2018, I got to see them again. That it was like really nice to see familiar faces. They were so welcoming. So yeah, of course the birds are what draws everyone to Cape May, but really I think what keeps people in Cape May is the community. It's just so warm and welcoming.
Yeah, it is a unique place. And it's funny, my like the first day I ever remember birding at Cape May, I think I was like 12 or something. And I was probably a little older than that. I was probably like 14 or 15. But I remember going to Higbee on like a September day where it was probably like 90 degrees and like, 80 some percent humidity. And there was no migration happening at all. And I just remember being like, this is Higbee Beach. This is this place I've heard about forever. This place, is nothing special at all. In fact, I used some worse language than that, I think. But yeah, eventually later on, I saw what the magic of Cape May can be on a good migration day, and there's really nothing like it. Yeah, so why don't you tell folks a little bit about what you're doing this autumn?
Yeah, so I'm one of the interpretive naturalists for Cape May Bird Observatory. So there are 3 of us, along with a George Myers naturalist, which is a 9-month position. And our job is, we always just like to jokingly say is interpret nature. But we're pointing out birds, educating folks, anywhere from just people who have never touched binoculars before to fairly seasoned and experienced birders. It's the whole range of people. As well as, making sure the hawk count goes smoothly. That is a big part of our job, is just to make sure that our counters can count and do their job without getting too distracted. But yeah, definitely I think the meat of it is just talking to people, inspiring people, getting people interested, or, I hope that I've sparked some people through the job. But it's a really, really fun job. You get to be up on the Hawk platform or up at Sea Watch or a morning flight early in September, and you get to experience it all and also be that bridge between the birds and, these people who want to see the birds or just learn about them.
So are you working at each of those different stations as an interpretive naturalist?
Yeah, so we rotate amongst the 3 of us. So in September, we staff the morning flight platform down below the dike. From September 1st to October 15th. And then once Sea Watch gets started, which was October 1st this year, it was sort of a slow start, only on the weekends, and now we're always there and we're done with morning flight. And then there's always at least one of us on Hawk Watch, which is our busiest for sure in terms of visitors.
Nice. And what would you say are what are some of the more common questions you get from folks while you're, I'm sure you get a lot of stuff, and I know you get a lot of the familiar faces, and as we were saying, that's one of the cool, fun things about Cape May is kind of everybody comes through. It feels like so you're kind of you're adding to your birder life list all along the way.
Yeah, 6 years this year.
Yeah, I saw the list of people that were going to be there, and I was like, I'm going to go down, and I'm looking forward to meeting Martina. I was looking forward to meeting Daniel Irons, who I'd kind of seen around, but I'd heard lots about, of course. But it really quite an epic team you guys have down there this year.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. But what would you say when people come up? I guess it depends which station, which place you're at, whether it's the Sea Watch, Hawk Watch, or the morning flight. What are some of the common things people are asking you about?
So interestingly enough, so we're an observer of birds as well as people, and it varies throughout the season. Early in the season, September, it's a lot of tourists and not a whole lot of birders. So what are those white birds? And they're always the mute swans.
I was thinking egrets, but of course, mute swans.
I know. You would, we would hope that they would be the egrets, but no, they're always the swans. How do you count the birds? How do you know you're not counting the same one twice?
Right.
That one, I said it a little exasperated.
A little, yeah. You actually, only a little is pretty good, Martina. From what I have seen, most people say it a lot exasperated.
Yeah, that's definitely the one. I think from across the tourists and the birders is the most common. It doesn't matter what your skill level is. Everyone asks that. And really, now that we're into October a bit more, so it seems as the season goes on, it's shifted to less tourists and more birders. So a lot of times it's ID questions, sharp-shinned, Cooper's hawk ID.
Oof, that's
very, very common.
Yep. Intimidating for all.
Yeah, and it's actually one that I really never get tired of explaining to people, even though I get asked about it probably several dozen times a day, depending on how many visitors we have.
Well, that's a nice pairing. You guys get a lot of them. They come by pretty regularly, and they can do so in pretty dramatic fashion, too.
Yeah, like oftentimes you'll get Sharpies swooping on Coopers, and like that's a great, side-by-side comparison. Or, they'll often like buzz the sparrows down, feeding down below the Hawkwatch platform, or just soar overhead. So they thankfully show pretty well for us.
Oh, that's cool. Now, Martina, I have to ask. Like, I'm compelled by as a podcaster, as a podcast host, that you answered what the most common question is that you get asked. I think the folks are dying to hear how you would answer that question. I don't want to ask it myself because I know that it's I can't bring myself to actually ask the question. But.
Which is
the how do you know if you're?
Oh yes, yeah. Sorry. So
I literally can't say it. I can't.
The cop-out answer for us naturalists, at least for me, that I've adopted is we follow the same protocol every year, and so it's
consistent.
Hopefully making the same mistake every year. Of course, there's so much variability in these sorts of like counting, like any sort of counting. I guess census or survey, sampling, whatever you want to call it. And that like the counter or the equipment that you're using or the weather, all that varies. But in terms of counting, it's really hard in Cape May. I will say that. It is really hard. It's not like a ridge site where you can just see the birds going south and they have no qualms about going south. They're just going. Here, the birds will mill around. They'll thermal for a while. They'll, get up in a kettle and just mill around. And we probably see the same dozen broadwings, all morning. But it's very much behavioral. And I think probably the counters themselves can answer this a little bit more nuanced than I can. But definitely, I know they're trying to see the birds as they're coming in before they start kettling with everything else. And usually once it hits a kettle, it's kind of been counted or not counted, as far as I'm aware. And there's some species that they're just super obvious. Like today we had a lot of harriers just high up looking at south. Harriers have no qualms about crossing water, so they don't get all wishy-washy about if they should cross or if they should not cross. But turkey vultures, accipiters, bootios, they're all kind of, they'll have to make up their mind about if they want to go today or not.
Right.
Or at all. So
Falcons make it easier on you as well, right?
Yeah. Typically, the Merlin can get kind of tricky, actually. What they do is they'll hunt locally, like over Bunker Pond there in front of the Hawkwatch. So typically peregrines won't stick around, so they're pretty easy to count. They just kind of book it south usually. And kestrels usually don't hang around too often. They'll just sort of float on by. But the Merlins can be the tricky ones out of those three. But usually they're easier than the actual hawks themselves.
Nice. Has there been a day or a moment so far this autumn? We're coming to the end of your time, right? For the season. Has there been a particular birding moment or two that were special highlights?
Oh boy. That's a really hard one to narrow down. Of course, most of my experiences are at the Hawkwatch platform. So anything like during Hurricane Ophelia, it was actually really like bad weather, and it was kind of miserable to be standing out in the rain and having no visitors. But the tree swallows would swarm, and we'd watch the merlin hunt them. So throughout those like 4 or 5 like really cloudy, rainy, windy days, we watched merlin take out like 4 tree swallows in front of us,
wow.
which is just so cool. Like to watch both the swallows and the merlins like in their element. You know, sometimes the swallow got away, sometimes it didn't, and just seeing that happen on the daily, I never got tired of it. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a huge scoter flight at Avalon. It was 15,000 black scoters, at least for when I was there.
Sorry, how many?
15,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and those are black scoters, not counting the surfs or unidentified ones. And it was pretty incredible just to like look in the scope towards Atlantic City and just see waves of scoters headed south, just almost nonstop. I've never seen that before, so that was definitely a highlight for me. And then I guess like people moments for me is every time there's a cool bird, or I don't know, it's like sort of that shared sense of like high fives all around. We had a rough-legged hawk on Tuesday, and that was just kind of out of the blue, and everyone was going around, high five. It was great looks had by all, and such a stunning bird.
Nice. What did this one look like? Was it was a pale one, I assume?
Yeah, light morph, and it looked like a female with a dark belly or darker belly.
Oh, that's cool.
Being harassed by crows.
Oh, wow.
Poor girl.
Yeah.
And the day before we had a golden eagle, so it was also similar. Everyone was in good spirits, and it sort of sets the tone for the rest of the day. With when that cool the bird of the day flies by.
Yes, man. Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. Well, what do you have coming up after this season?
That is always, I think, the most loaded question people ask me that they don't realize is loaded for a field technician. I'll be visiting my family in Italy, which I'm looking forward to. So we'll be able to get some birding in. I haven't been since I was 16, so it's been a bit.
Wow.
I'm a much better birder than I was then, and I've never been in November, so I'm looking forward to seeing some birds I haven't seen since then. Like I'm hoping to see some white-throated dippers. Those were probably my favorite.
Oh yeah.
We might go to the Po Delta and like look at greater flamingos. I'm fingers crossed the North Carolina flamingos can hang on for another week so I can go look at them.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they were still there, and there's a group of like 15 or something, right? That's been.
Yeah, I think it was like 13 last I saw. Yeah, something like that, but still a good number. And I'm sure they're enjoying the south front.
Yeah.
Before these northern winds.
Very pleasant for them of late, anyway.
Yeah. So and ideally, I still need to do some more research on where to go, but wall creeper is the main target bird of the trip. I'd be really happy if I can get a wall creeper.
What an amazing bird.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's a toughie though.
Wow. That sounds fantastic. So a couple last questions before we scoot here. What is, quote, the roost?
Well, the roost is what you see behind me here.
Uh-huh.
This is the shared, I guss, bunkhouse. Not really. I mean, it's the shared house of all the seasonal employees, except this year for our Monarch technicians. So the Monarch techs are CMBO employees. They're being housed over by the Cape May Science Center in the Queen. But here we have all the counters, all the naturalists, and all the banding staff, as well as one state employee. So it's a packed house.
Wow. Must be fun to be around all those people doing all that research and learning so much and seeing so much. You guys must have some fun times. Do you guys
Absolutely.
have any sort of like festivities planned before like the crew disbands? And
well, actually, right after this, we'll probably go out to one of the local breweries here. Usually on Thursday nights, there's a potluck by the community. Another huge reason I love Cape May, and so probably I'll go out tonight. And I think, there is going to be a Halloween party, which is our last day. As interpretive naturalists. So the count will continue. The counters will be here, the banders will be here, but the naturalists, that's our last day. So
right on. And do you have a Halloween costume planned, or are you going to dress up?
I'm trying to work out how to dress up as a peregrine falcon. I figured it's Cape May. You kind of have to.
Yeah.
Or I could be a Merlin and just dress the same, but like punch people. Or just be like really like, antagonistic and just try to pick fights with everyone.
I always said that's my top reincarnation bird is the Merlin. You just come back and you kind of get to do what you want, and nobody can really catch you. It's like it looks like a lot of fun, even though it may not be for everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question, Martina. What is your go-to comfort food that you go for while you're down there in Cape May?
Ooh, West Side Market.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, now at this point in the season, they've closed. Like they were closed more days. So I can't get it as much as I want. But like, especially when you've been standing and talking to people all day, you go and get a nice like hot like cheesesteak. Ooh.
Nice. Yep. I have been to that place and gotten sandwiches a number of times. It is good. West Side Market. Yep.
Yeah. Love it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Martina. Enjoy Italy. Look forward to seeing what you got coming up down the road.
Thank you, George. It was nice talking to you.
Great talking to you. Okay, I am here with Gautam Apte, who is doing some censusing at Epic Historic Cape May. Welcome, Gautam. Tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at Cape May.
Yeah, thanks, George. So I'm originally from Ohio, which is not too far away from Cape May, but I didn't actually make it out here for the first time until about 5 years ago. I kind of came with a college group, and we just kind of came around Cape May in the fall and saw what was going on. And after that, I kind of found myself coming back maybe a little more often than was good for my academic success. But
funny how that happens.
Yeah. But since I managed to graduate, I've now was able to secure a job here last fall, and they've been kind enough to have me back for another season here. So I'm really enjoying my time here. It's been wrapping up the second season now, and if you add to that all my time loitering here in years past, I've spent a good chunk of time here, and it's always a great place to be.
Yeah, it really is an amazing spot. And you have been doing mostly morning flight stuff?
Yeah, so my primary job is that I'm the main morning flight counter here. So typically 6 days a week, I'm up at our count site at Higbee Beach Wildlife Management Area, recording songbirds, and that runs from the beginning of August to mid-November.
Gotcha. And most of these birds, I actually, I did some morning flight stuff this year at Cape May, and I was telling a friend about it recently who's a serious birder, actually, and I had mentioned to him that the birds were all headed north, and even, I know everybody down at Cape May knows that, it's fall migration, but most of the birds you see are heading north. But a lot of birders that haven't experienced this don't actually, that's counterintuitive. Maybe tell folks a little bit about what you're seeing, in the morning and what direction these birds are heading and why.
Yeah, sure. So for anybody that's not familiar with Cape May sits on the tip of a south-facing peninsula. So it's actually the southernmost point in the state of New Jersey. So the way it works as a migrant trap is that migratory birds kind of hit the coast and they funnel down. And since Cape May is that first south-facing peninsula, a lot of birds end up there. And, when it's night, a lot of these nocturnally migrating songbirds don't have a problem crossing over the Delaware Bay. It's about 13 miles of open water from the tip of the peninsula over to Cape Henlopen in Delaware. But once day breaks, birds are suddenly very reluctant to cross this vast expanse of open water. So what ends up happening is on a real classic, like good migration northwest winds day, a lot of these birds end up rounding the tip of the peninsula. They come down the ocean side and they turn to the west and then back north. And they end up going up the bay shore. whether that be to kind of stop and drop into habitats that are kind of up the bayshore a bit to feed for the day before resuming their southbound migration at night. Or, a lot of them might end up going north a ways to where the bay is narrower and they can make that crossing with a little less effort. We're not really sure what they do, but that's kind of the general principle behind why all of these birds end up going north. And it's a truly magical phenomenon. You see these massive numbers of warblers and sparrows and kinglets, woodpeckers, all these things that you'd have never imagined in big flocks, hundreds and thousands, all pouring north along the bayshore there.
That's great. And just to give folks a little bit of scope, what are some of the higher counts? I'm sure there's some days where there's not a whole lot of movement and you just get, dozens of birds, but then there's other days where you get, hundreds and even thousands of certain species. Right. What are some of the bigger counts and flights that you've witnessed over your last 2 seasons here at Cape May?
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough to have been here for some pretty big ones. Obviously, this monitoring's been going on here for a couple decades now. So the biggest flights ever, I've not been able to record very many of those, but even in my 2 years here, I've been able to see some impressive things. I think the most impressive was probably a day with close to 70,000 yellow-rumped warblers last fall. We had another day this fall with close to 60,000.
Wow.
Other days, when you see these really diverse early September flights, kind of dominated by American redstarts, but those warbler flights can get up to 30, 40,000. I've seen a couple of those. But, you hear people talk about the stuff of the early 2000s, the 1990s. People talk about the 500,000 robin flight or the 250,000 yellow rump flight. All this stuff just gives you kind of a sense of what is possible with the right setup and the right conditions,
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a particular, over 2 seasons, that's probably an advantage you have over a lot of folks. Some folks just only have a season at Cape May. Many folks, of course, never ever get to spend that much time at Cape May, which is part of the reason I wanted to do these interviews with you guys, is to get a sense of a season at the point. It's a great book by Jack Connor. Covers some of the topics we're touching on today. Are there a couple? I know that knowing you and knowing what you've seen over the past couple of years, I know you've seen some really good stuff. But are there a couple sort of standout moments in terms of vagrants or particular flights that really resonate with you as you think back over these 2 seasons?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple. I think the most defining thing about being up there every day is kind of the knowledge and the experience that it doesn't need to be a really special day or a really huge flight for something incredible to happen. It can happen on any day. It can happen, when you least expect it, on southeast winds or something, which is typically, the worst winds for migration in Cape May. It's the opposite of what we want for land birds. But anything really can happen. And it's often on those slow days that, you're kind of starting to zone out a little bit and you look up and you see something really cool flying over. Kind of keeps you focused on your toes and really tuned into what's going on, which I think is kind of the magic of Cape May. In terms of standout flights or vagrants, Bullock's Oriole this year definitely comes to mind. That was again on a day where, it was an okay flight, but it wasn't anything spectacular. And it was a very early September day in a time of year when we're not really thinking about vagrants. And then this Bullock's Oriole flew across the road and happened to perch up on top of one of the trees on the dune line. And this guy, I know Chris Hinkle, standing 2 people down from me, gets it in his scope and starts losing his mind, freaking out. Everybody with this Oriole. It's just kind of one of those reminders when we all look at it and we're like, oh man, a Bullock's Oriole, male Bullock's Oriole in Cape May on September 4th. That it doesn't have to be, the biggest cold front of all time. It doesn't have to be, the biggest bottleneck effect and then the dam breaking of migrants for there to be some sort of special momentous occasion happening with some bird in Cape May. It's always there,
Yeah, anything can happen anytime, kind of. That's kind of the genius. Yeah.
I'll say it's also kind of strange the way it works with the other birders and the flights here. oftentimes there's a really, really strong sense of knowledge about the way migration works in the community here. So on a day where a big flight's expected, a lot of folks will have been monitoring the radar overnight. They'll have been looking at the winds for a couple days. They kind of know when's a good time to be out there. So after seeing nobody up there, no visitors for about a week in late August, you'll finally get a night of northwest winds. And without saying anything, you show up the next morning and there's already 10, 12, 15 people up there. So they kind of know that, but it's, again, having the job to be up there every day, it's almost always the days you least expect it where something truly incredible happens outside of the realm of expectation. That was certainly the case with the big Yellow Rump flight last year. Nobody was really thinking it was going to be anything big. And I walked up there, as I always do, 15 minutes before sunrise. And all of a sudden, the sky is just filled with warblers. And I think it was the intensity of that flight was like nothing I've ever seen before. It was about 50,000 birds in an hour.
Wow.
And for much of that hour, I was the only person up there. And that's the only time that I've really been up there by myself on such a large flight, because it was so sneaky. It just kind of happened one day.
Wow. That's wild. That's very cool. So, I wanted to ask too, because how long have you been birding, and did you do a lot of like youth birding events, go to any birding camps, or, if I'm sure there's people out there that are seeing that you've done this a couple falls and it's a pretty great opportunity for somebody who is serious about birding and learning more about birds. How did you end up, what kind of path led you to being the morning flight counter? Were there, and are there some cool, events for young birders that you might recommend, or ways to learn more about birds?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of been birding since I was fairly young, 9 or 10, I would say. Off and on, I wasn't really serious about it until kind of high school. But I did join the Ohio Young Birders Club, which was a great, and still is a great, fantastic organization where I'm from in Ohio. That was a great way for me to kind of meet other people my age, get some mentorship from figures in the community. And then there were field trips and events. They had this Ohio Young Birders Conference, which was really valuable for me. So I kind of did that, but I was never really into this migration morning flight stuff. I didn't really know too much about it until the first time I came to Cape May on that trip. Kind of walked up on the dike as part of that was just our plan for the day. And I didn't really know what it was all about. We walked up and I think it was a pretty good flight, 7,000 or 8,000 yellow rumps probably. But I kind of walked up there and I was so taken aback by the fact that all these birds that usually have to scour through flocks and bushes and trees and hedges and ravines to see all of these could be just dozens and hundreds and thousands just in the sky, like a gull or a hawk would be in a single morning. So I was really, really taken by that. And after that, I started to go back home to Ohio and look for places where I might be able to see that there. And I was pretty successful finding some spots where, of course, nowhere close to the scale of Cape May, but still anywhere you look, there's going to be visible active migration. So I was able to do that a little bit, really started getting into it. And then kind of separate from that, I'd already been working some field research jobs, bird-related, ornithology-related type jobs where I'd built up some field experience that way. So then once I graduated, I was kind of able to put all that together, and I got pretty lucky in being able to get offered this job here.
Now you are staying at the Roost, am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. Nice.
And I imagine that in and of itself has got to be quite an experience.
Yeah, it's funny. Every field job, almost every field job I've ever worked has some sort of funny, odd housing situation going on. And now this is, I've worked 6 or 7 of these things now for a couple of years of my life I've spent doing field work. And the Roost is definitely interesting. I'm sure not a lot of people know this, but it's the housing that Cape May Bird Observatory provides for its seasonal staff. And it's quite a large house, but when there's 10 to 12 people packed in there, it gets to be quite a interesting situation, but it's a really, really phenomenal environment, getting to share and be with all these people that are interested in such similar things. It's rare in the world of avian fieldwork that you have a environment of coworkers who are also interested in birding and birding specifically. That's actually quite rare for other tech jobs where you're doing kind of more field research, less kind of birding count related stuff. It's actually quite rare that you have coworkers that are birders. But here it's like nothing I've ever seen before, and it's phenomenal having that place to come home and share your sightings and talk about what's going on. And I kind of wonder together, why is this happening? Why did we see a flight of these things today? Why did this not happen today like we thought it was going to? It's a really valuable experience, I think.
I kind of envy you guys that it's such a talented and fun group of people you have there that it seems really, really cool. I'm curious about a couple things about some of your fellow roosters, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
Who functions best on the least amount of sleep, and who is the best ultimate Frisbee player?
Those are two very easy questions to answer. So best on the least amount of sleep would undoubtedly be our Sea Watch counter, Daniel Irons. It's remarkable. I've seen him, leave for work 30 minutes before sunrise. He counts out there all day, puts in a 12-hour day, comes back, doesn't even, stop for dinner, and he's out there watching nocturnal migration with us until midnight, 1 a.m., and then back out there at 5:30 a.m. again for a full 12-hour day at the Sea Watch.
A glutton for punishment. At a guy,
I don't know how he does it, but I'm glad he does. And then the best ultimate Frisbee player is certainly our naturalist, Andrew Martin. Not only is he about 8 feet tall, but he's got quite the speed and quite the bounce. So he's a pretty valuable player to have on your
easy
team.
Target. Yeah.
Yeah. I seem to never wind up on a team with him though. So that could be interesting.
My wife, Kristen, got to play with you guys last week.
Yeah,
she very much enjoyed it, although she was like, I'm definitely the oldest person here by about 10 years. She was like, I was really glad, George, to see you pack up your scope and go, because she was like, I'm winded and I'm done. But
she did play on Andrew's team, though, so she had that.
Oh, that helped her a lot. Yeah. She absolutely loved it. She said you guys were fantastic. So last question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask this of each of you guys. What is your go-to comfort food spot?
Go-to comfort food spot. I have to say that if I'm really looking for comfort food, I'll probably cook something for myself.
Okay. Anything in particular?
It's a good, lately, when it gets to be this time of year, I'm a really big fan of taking a day, maybe my day off. I get one day off a week. Sometimes if it's cold and rainy and windy, I'll make a big pot roast and just leave it simmering on the stove for, all day basically. There's something about the smell of just like red wine and simmering vegetables and spices and all that. It's kind of filling the house. That's kind of what I go to times like that.
That sounds pretty darn nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Gautam. Look forward to seeing how the rest of the season winds down for you there. Good luck, and thanks for chatting today.
Of course, George. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, now we are here with Aidan Place. Aidan is the hawk counter at Cape May this autumn for the Cape May Bird Observatory. Aidan, welcome, and maybe tell us a little bit about what you've been doing this fall.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this. So I'm as you said, I'm the hawk counter, which is basically means I sit on the hawk platform at Cape May Point State Park from dawn until at least 5 p.m. or whenever the raptors stop moving, and just count everything that is actively migrating and like moving past me. And as I'm sure many people know, that's kind of the complicated part of the Cape May Hawk Watch, is figuring out what is actively migrating and what is actually coming past me and not just hanging around. But so it's theoretically a pretty simple job, but it ends up being a bit more complicated than it sounds.
Especially I would imagine, on the big flight days, and if there happen to be a lot of onlookers, yeah?
Yeah, it's a very public spot, which is really interesting and fairly new for me. Most of my past field work has been in pretty remote areas, so it's really new that there's upwards of 1,000+ people like watching me do my work every day. I think that's pretty unusual. That is also one of the highlights, is that I get to see a lot of people discover the sort of magic migration in front of me. But yeah, of course, the big visitor days usually coincide with the big flights because that's when all the birders come down. So that does make it complicated.
Yes. Do you have a preference? Or I know, like, some hawk orchards like the early season, some like late season more. Is there a time period during this September, October, November window that is a particular favorite for you, or are you kind of good with all of it?
I'm generally good with all of it. I really like ospreys, so the very start of the season, when that was more or less our most common bird, was really fun for me. But I've really been enjoying this like really late season part of it. The numbers overall, the flights aren't quite as big, but there's more sort of like really cool, fun things to find. We've been getting a lot of rough-legged hawks recently, which is really unusual down here to have as many as we've had. But just like having a rough-legged hawk pop up into view partway through the day is just like so exciting every time that happens. And you get golden eagles, and should be getting goshawks any day now. I don't know. It's cool having that sort of like. I feel like later in sort of early November, late October, you get more sort of like I don't know, exciting birds coming by. Get a bit more variety.
Yes, that's as listeners to the podcast probably are aware at this point. I'm very much fond of the late season gray skies and a little bit brisk. To me, that's it. It feels like the possibilities are endless in late October, November, even into December. I'm a big fan of that, and the chances of goshawk, golden eagle, or roughies. It does seem like it's been a good rough-legged hawk season. I imagine you would have seen that there was one even down on the Florida Keys yesterday.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. The first one that we had popped up in mid-October, and there were two that day, only one of which made it to the Hawk Watch, and that sort of seemed a good indicator that it was going to be a good year, but everyone was, of course, pretty hesitant to say anything definitive. And then we've gotten many more since then, so I think it's safe to say it's been a good year for them so far. Yeah. And I scraped frost off my car for the first time this season this morning, so definitely into the late season now.
28 degrees here at dawn.
Yeah.
Talk about a wake-up call. Man, winter is just about here.
More or less, yeah. I had tundra swans this morning, lots of sparrows, very, very wintry out there.
Yeah, love it. By the way, as we are chatting here, I am seeing the second ever eastern chipmunk in my yard. So that's kind of cool. And he has his jowls are stuffed with seeds. He looks very, very happy.
It feels late for a chipmunk. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually also today, I imagine part of this big cold push, I'm not sure what, but there's a Baltimore Oriole in the yard here, which is quite late.
It is.
Pretty cool. So, Aidan, tell folks how did you end up doing this job this fall? What was kind of your pathway to Cape May, and maybe what other field experience, job experience did you accrue that helped to get you to this fantastic migration mecca?
Yeah, Cape May has always been kind of at the back of my mind as a place I'd like to work. I came here for the first time in, I think, 2019, which was my sophomore year of university. And I've come back a couple times since, and it's incredible, both from a birding perspective and from like a learning perspective. I always thought that I'd learn more and improved more as a birder and a naturalist more in like the 2 days I'd spent in Cape May over like a long weekend than I did in like a whole season otherwise. So it was always sort of in the back of my mind as a place I really wanted to get to for a whole season. I graduated from college last spring, so I've been just working field jobs full time since then, and I worked field jobs in summers during college as well. I've been really excited because now that I don't have schoolwork anymore, I can work field jobs in the fall, which are really cool because it's almost exclusively migration monitoring jobs. And those are really appealing to me just because I think it's just kind of neat to sit in one place for a whole season and like watch it go by. And this job is very much the epitome of that because if you're working a banding job, you're at one site, but this job is just one 10 by 10 square foot section of hawk watching platform that I'm there for almost the entire duration of daylight, almost every day. Yeah, so I've worked a bunch of field jobs out west in the summers, and then I usually come back to the East Coast in the fall. I worked a banding job last fall, but I really wanted to work one of these migration counts. So I just applied and got it. But yeah, I think working a variety of jobs and just having a lot of general experience and having spent time at migration counts in the past just recreationally, I think really helped me get this position. Sorry, it's kind of long-winded, but
No, that's perfect. It's great, and I do think it's fascinating. You guys have really a great team there this fall. We've gotten to speak. I got to speak with Martina earlier, and Gautam. You have Daniel Irons there at the Sea Watch, who's already a legend at the ripe old age of 20 or 21. It seems like,
yeah.
And I'm trying to remember who's the swing counter.
Tom Reed is the alternate counter. So on my days off, he's up there.
That's right. I knew that. Yep. Yeah. Well, it's quite an impressive squad, and I've been asking the other folks that we've chatted with about the Roost. The Roost. I mean, there's got to be some really interesting dinner conversations, probably some late nights, I would imagine, I would think that's got to be one of the highlights. What's it like living at the Roost?
Yeah, it's been really cool. Obviously, in a lot of field jobs, you go in not knowing your coworkers, and that can be one of the best parts and one of the worst parts of field work because it's cool to meet new people every 3 months, but it's also such a bummer when you then have to leave those people every 3 months and move on to like a totally new environment. So one of the highlights of this job for me is that I knew most of my coworkers going in. Martina, for example, I went to bird camp with her. She and I went to Camp Cascades together back in like 2015 or 2016. And so it's felt like a reunion in a lot of ways. And that's been really, really great. Gautam I have known for a long time as well. So yeah, it's just been great. It just feels like you're just like back with a bunch of old friends. So yeah, the Roost has been pretty excellent. It's nice coming back from a day at the Hawkwatch and just being able to like talk to a bunch of like-minded people and see what they saw that day and their impressions of the flight that day or how the migration's going. So it's been excellent.
I imagine you guys must have a good text chain between everybody. It's probably some good stuff there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Now, when you're on the Hawk platform, I was wondering about this. Do you guys, whether it's you or Tom Reed, obviously you are recording the number of hawks you're seeing, and you do that on an hourly, half-hour segments, and then obviously total up for the day. But tell folks about how you record birds, and also if there's a place where they can actually see the data that you guys are recording.
Yeah, so it's quite cool. Since 2016 or so, I think 2016 was the first year, Cape May has kept all its data on this website called Trektellen, which is a Dutch website, and it apparently means migration count in Dutch, which I only found out when there was a Dutch visitor to the platform who informed us that that's what that meant. So if you just go to trektellen.nl or .org, either work, you can click on Cape May Hawkwatch and you can see live down to the minute everything that's being seen. So that's the nitty gritty of like how the data is recorded. I've got a little tablet up there and I just enter the data into my tablet as I go.
So are you recording constantly by the half hour, by the hour?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that kind of depends on the volume of the flight. If we're having just tons of birds coming by, I usually keep things on clickers for the most abundant species. So typically for raptors, that's usually sharp-shinned hawks and Cooper's hawks, or sharp-shinned hawks or kestrels or something like that, some combination like that. And then I'll just dump all that data in on the hour. Every hour I have to update the weather. So I enter all the data in at the hour when I do the weather change, and then I just refresh my clickers and keep going. If the flight is a bit smaller, if it's more manageable, where I don't feel like I have to be constantly looking for new birds, and I will just enter the data as it happens. So if I see a sharp-shinned hawk, I'll just put one sharp-shinned hawk into the tablet, that kind of thing.
Nice. And what, in terms of numbers, what has been your what would you say has been one of your most interesting day, or a couple of your most interesting days in terms of flights?
Yeah, the numbers overall have been somewhat below average this year, largely as a result of weather. Something that's interesting about hawk watches, and that makes the data complicated to analyze, is that they're so weather dependent and weather variable, that from year to year you can't necessarily make anything of the data from one individual year. You have to look at overall trends. So this has definitely been a below average year. But there have been some really cool flights regardless. One of the most memorable ones, I think, was this one day that it was a pretty good day. It was after a cold front. This was mid-October. I had counted like 800 sharp-shinned hawks, maybe 500 Cooper's hawks. But then within the last 2 or 3 hours of the count, suddenly like tons of merlins picked up out of nowhere. And in the last 2 hours of the count, I counted 395 merlins, which is the third highest count since Trectelon's been used, in the Trectelon era, the third highest merlin count here, and is just a really impressive count. And the fact that it was all compacted to those last couple hours of the day was really cool. I actually hadn't realized you get a lot of merlins hunting over the pond, and so it could be hard to figure out which merlins are moving. And I was definitely undercounting initially, and then Louisa Midas came up on the platform and said that Michael O'Brien was out at Coral Avenue, which is this nearby spot on the shore of the bay, and was watching the merlins just shoot out over the bay across towards Delaware. And I was like, oh, okay, so they're not sticking around. These aren't birds coming back around. These are all new birds that are moving. And I just started clicking then, and it was a really impressive flight. That was probably the highlight of my season so far in terms of numbers.
Was that right around that storm, the tropical was that the it was mid-October or early October?
Ophelia?
Yeah.
This was after Ophelia.
Okay.
By a good bit. Although Ophelia produced a really interesting flight as well, but just of pectoral sandpipers. I counted 500 something pectoral sandpipers on the second day of Ophelia, which is, that was really crazy too.
That was crazy. Yeah, I was down for a little bit of that, and I saw a couple hundred, not as many as you did, and some golden plovers too, which was cool, and nice bunch of birds. Nice. And you mentioned the rough-legged hawk. Have there been any surprising non-hawk birds that stand out for the season?
There have been some impressive flights of robins recently, which I've really enjoyed. I really like American robins. I think one of the cool things about Cape May is that you take these birds that are ostensibly quite common, but you put them in such huge numbers that they just become incredible again. And I think it really makes you appreciate some of the common birds when you see them in these big spectacles. So there have been some really fun robin flights recently that I've really enjoyed. We've had a couple cool rarities from the Hawk Watch that haven't been hawks. We had a lark sparrow one day. A western kingbird came by. We had an eared grebe that sat on the pond in front of the Hawk Watch for almost 3 weeks, and that was only the second record from the Hawk Watch. That was great. There was a brown booby that came by in Ophelia. I don't know how I almost forgot about that. The same day as the high pectoral sandpiper count, I was feeling a little bummed because everyone was having this crazy sea watching, and the dunes have grown up so high in recent years that I basically can't see the ocean at all from the Hawk Watch. But it turned out that didn't really matter because this brown booby comes down maybe 5 feet above the dunes and just cruises down the dune line.
Oh wow!
And that was really cool to see. So there's been some cool stuff. It's great to see. The Hawk Watch is awesome because there's obviously lots of raptors, but you're there all day, so you see a lot of cool non-raptor stuff, and it's a little bit of the best of both worlds, I think.
Were you there for the big sit?
I was. Yeah, I was there for all but an hour of that 24-hour big sit. Yeah.
Nice. And how did you guys do that day? I think, as I recall, the weather was like kind of too beautiful and bright blue skies and sunny, at least around here. It didn't make for the best big sit species count, but was it an enjoyable big sit for you guys?
It was. It was like really, really windy, which made it difficult for some passerines. Like we didn't get like Carolina chickadee, we didn't get song sparrow, we didn't get just like during like the sort of peak of passerine activity, the wind was so strong that like nothing was really happening. But I think we ended with 134 species, which is a pretty good total. I think.
Yeah, that is darn good. And I think Cape May still holds the record, if I remember, from that site for the big sit.
It does, and I think that was last year or the year before. It was pretty recently, which is, I mean, that's really impressive. So yeah, it was just like, it was cool. It was a cool like team effort. It was great to be there for almost the whole 24 hours of it. We accumulated like a lot of species at night, actually, like way more than I maybe would have expected. I think we had like 44 species by the time sunrise hit.
Wow!
So that was a good time.
That's wild. 2 more questions before I let you go here.
Sure.
Now there's some slow days when your mind wanders, and like all stationary counts, right? There's days that are really thrilling and moments that are really thrilling, and then there's other times which are slower. When your mind wanders, what is a bird you fantasize about seeing as a hawk counter up there? And then also, if I've been asking everybody, what is your go-to comfort food when you're finished up a long day? What's your go-to comfort food there in Cape May?
It's both very good questions. I think people who have been around me out this fall in Cape May will laugh at my answer to the first one because I've been talking about it so damn much this season. I really want to see an alpine swift in the A Bay area.
Ooh, yeah.
I know that sounds insane, but
it could happen.
It's so distinctive looking that it's not like it would get misidentified.
Right. Largest swift, I think. Yeah.
Quite big. Yeah. Definitely large. There's 4 records now from the New World, mostly in Bermuda and the Lesser Antilles. Although just this past week, Brazil got a record, which is the first South American one. It definitely feels like one of these things that could jump across the Atlantic and then just sort of like move north and south.
It is a distinctive bird. It's
very distinctive.
Big brown swift with a white belly. If you saw one, it would be it would
jump
not be
out.
hard to it would not be hard to identify. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like swifts in Europe have a track record of showing up at these coastal peninsula concentration points. So why not Cape May? Yeah, that's definitely the bird I've been talking about, half jokingly, half seriously, the whole season about. I'm gonna find an alpine swift up there. I've missed my window, I think now, but you never know. You never know. And then in terms of food, oh man, I feel like you can't go wrong with spaghetti. There's something about like just the carbs in it that like when you're exhausted from a long day of sitting on a platform in the wind and the cold, going home and having some pasta is pretty hard to beat.
That is my father's favorite meal is spaghetti with meatballs. Yep. Pretty good. Aidan, thanks so much for the time today. I hope that alpine swift comes rocketing by soon.
That'll be tomorrow, or the day after, one of these days.
Nice. Cheers, man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody, to our interviews with these 3 really dedicated and talented young birders that spent their fall at Cape May. The Cape May Bird Observatory was founded in 1976 and still has lots of stuff going on. We encourage you to check out the CMBO website and also to consider attending one of their many events, including the Fall Festival, which happens every October. Thanks very much to Martina, to Gautam, and to Aidan for doing these interviews. We look forward to seeing what the future holds for these fine young birders. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll be back again soon with another episode of Life List.